Welcome everyone to today's Facebook Talk brought to you, by Communities and Schools of Greater Tarrant County. I'm Kaitlin Tollison, licensed clinical social worker. I'm the Vice President of Mental Health Supports for the organization. So you may have been able to join us for our last talk that we did a couple of months ago in the fall semester. And so if so, welcome back. If you're a first-time viewer, we are thrilled to have you with us. So originally, whenever I was working with, again, Burleson ISD to do another talk for their families, we had planned it to be over testing anxiety. But considering where we are now, and since there are not going to be STAR tests and things like that this year, that's no longer relevant. So I was talking with the Communities and Schools program manager there, and we thought that doing a talk regarding the pandemic would be the most appropriate, honestly. And I hope that this won't be just a repeat of things that you may already be hearing as you're seeking out information, if you're doing those things already. But we always want our content and our resources that we bring to our followers, to our students and families that we serve on campus and now virtually. We want all of those things to be relevant and useful for you, which is why we decided to move forward with the topic of the pandemic. And so if you want to put a title or a name to it, we're entitling this Feeling Secure When the World Doesn't Feel That Way. Because I don't know about you, but a lot of feelings of insecurity have been creeping in on my life recently. If you are experiencing things like, honestly, everything in my world right now is different. I don't typically work from home, and that's what I'm doing. And so balancing I have a 9-month-old, and so balancing her schedules when I'm not normally at home and her adjustment to this different world, and not choosing to not go out to the store. And even when I have to do that, do I wear gloves? Do I wear a mask? How safe are the other people around me? Am I too close to this person? Feeling maybe even some guilt or panic whenever you go to the grocery store, seeing empty shelves may be really alarming to you, and not feel like we're a first world country, for one, but also the guilt coming in of knowing that if I take this item, that means that the person behind me won't be able to. Or maybe you've experienced some feelings related to, or some thoughts related to, am I contributing to a hoarding mindset? But if I don't take this item now, am I not going to be able to provide for my family in the weeks to come? And even, more basic than that, of not even means, but just our general health and well-being. Have I already been contaminated? Have my kids? Do I let them outside to play? How do I explain to them that maybe it's not safe to go outside right now, and calm that panic within them? Or how do I let my family know that we need to be taking precautions, but still establish a sense of normalcy for them? You may even, be experiencing trying to keep up with your specific city or the county's different rules and mandates that they have now. Like the counties around Dallas has been, I'm not sure for how long now, but has been a little bit more proactive than Tarrant and even Collin counties. I have some family that lives there, and so keeping up with the news there of knowing that now we're under, what are they calling it, stay-at-home rules and things like that. So navigating that, and as the CDC and our lead medical teams are finding out more things about coronavirus and knowing how to protect ourselves, and if maybe you're in an age group where it is a lot more dangerous for you to get this virus now than it may be if you're in a younger generation. All of these things we may be thinking of, what what happens if one of my loved ones contracts this virus? I may not be able to see them if they die, knowing that we may not be able to go to the funeral. Things like that are coming up in our world that may not be crossing your mind before this pandemic was a thing. So in all of that, let's just take a minute. Who's experiencing some anxiety right now? I'll be really transparent and vulnerable in saying that those are all things that I have experienced, those that I talk to, that those are also really common things that they are experiencing and thinking and feeling during this time. And so if you're in that boat, let's just all be really honest and say, me too. You're not alone in feeling that. Things that, again, that we normally wouldn't have to give that much brain power to, we're having to. And so if you are feeling more exhausted, maybe just because now your kids are at home and you are now expected to learn material and help them and in a way be their teacher and homeschool them, when that hasn't been your role before. And so you may be also experiencing some conflict between you and your child, more than they're getting on my nerves, they're always here, I'm trying to get my work done and I can't because they're needing help, or they want a snack, or all of those things. There's a lot going on, and it's okay to take a minute and let that be allowed. It's okay for there to be times where it's not normal. So I just want to give that disclaimer almost, and just set the scene really for, in the midst of all the chaos, in the midst of the insecurity, how do we feel secure? Since that's what we're going to cover today, we have to first admit that there's a problem before we can find solutions for it. So, I know I've talked a little bit about guilt, fear, panic, anxiety. You may also, or your kids, or other family members that may live with you, may be experiencing things such as like depression or sadness. You may have lost someone to this virus. You may be dealing with a grief right now, anger, confusion, maybe some embarrassment, that maybe you are a person that doesn't like to ask for help, and now's a time where you're out of something and you have to ask for help, or your job is now labeled non-essential and you're no longer able to pay your bills. Some things like that are families that may not be faced with on a daily basis, are things that are coming up. All of these emotions, and too, not to be too doomsday, right? There are also sometimes, maybe you're getting some time with your family that you don't normally get, or maybe things are coming into a different perspective for you, and you are understanding and realizing that I need to maybe realign my priorities. And so maybe you're experiencing some joy or some happiness through this too. That's okay. All of those things are okay. There's a feeling, there's a saying that I actually put on my wall whenever I'm in the office seeing kids, that I have it posted above the whiteboard of my office, that says, all feelings are okay. It's what you do with them that matters. Because we don't live in a society that's okay with feelings. We just don't. They make us uncomfortable. We use a lot of defense mechanisms. So we have a lot of people that they'll deflect with humor, or they'll totally exit the situation if an emotion comes up that they're uncomfortable with. Again, I'll be vulnerable and transparent in saying that for me, like grief, sadness, anytime I'm experiencing that, I don't like to do that around other people. And so that's something that I have to fight against whenever I'm in that state of knowing that support networks are really important, and that feeling, that emotion, and the things that come with grief, or anything, other situations, every situation you experience some sort of emotion, that those things are okay and they're normal. They were built into us. They're part of our DNA, if you will. But how we respond to those things, that's what matters. Those are the things that can change situations, if you will. So I want to take us back again. If you were able to tune in last semester to our first talk over anxiety and depression, we went more into the weeds than I'm going to do today about anxiety and depression, because that was the focus of the talk, right? But in case you missed it, we spent a little bit of time talking about trauma. You may have also, I didn't say this in the first video, I don't think, but you may have heard different terms like big T's and little T's talking about like big traumas, like maybe you were in a natural disaster, or maybe you were affected by a pandemic, or you maybe you were sexually abused, or something that's big that in a way no one would ever challenge you on. No one would say, oh, that's not bad enough, like that trauma didn't exist. So those would be maybe our big T's, and little T's being more like day-to-day things that maybe the way that, based on your past experiences, the way that you interpret something or how you experience something is traumatic to you, but may not be to the next person. That's one way to think of it. That's not, I will admit, not the most eloquent way that's ever had, explanation wise. But in thinking about trauma, I think that once we come out of this pandemic, we're going to have a lot of people that have experienced this trauma in a big T way and a little T way. And if you remember, something that trauma does to us is it can be difficult, I will say, to get out of the downstairs part of your brain whenever you have significant or chronic or intergenerational traumas, whether they're big or little T. So if you're not familiar with the metaphor that I'm using then of viewing your brain as a house, many different parts to your brain, but if we focus on just two really key elements and you think about your brain as a house, you have an upstairs part of your house and a downstairs part, and they're separated by a baby gate. The part that we want to live out of is our prefrontal cortex, or executive functioning, where we make decisions that we're proud of, where we implement rational thinking. Those adult functions are in our upstairs part of our brain. The downstairs part of our brain is our more primitive infant brain, the emotional brain. It's our amygdala. So when we experience something that puts us into a place of survival, that's why trauma is talked about with the different parts of the brain so much, is because that puts you into a place of survival instincts where I'm sure everyone's heard, or maybe you haven't, and that's okay if you haven't, fight, flight, or freeze. And even more than that, of people are seeing that there's even more reactions to survival, and when we get there, but another talk for another time. So let's just take those three most common ones, the fight, flight, or freeze. When we get stuck there, when we experience things like anger, fear, sadness, shock, all those different emotions that maybe we would rather not experience, we might even say that they're inferior to happiness or joy, or things that, and really, we won't go off on that tangent. We may feel that way, that they're inferior. They're things we would rather not feel. That puts us into the downstairs part of our brain. If the stairs to get out of our amygdala, the downstairs part, up to our executive functioning, is locked with the baby gate, we can have a very hard time knowing how to find the key, how to unlock that baby gate to move from the downstairs to the upstairs. how you open that baby gate is through self-regulation, using the things to get yourself back regulated and reestablished to a sense of normalcy, so you can function and work and operate rather in your executive functioning, your prefrontal cortex. So if you're following that at all, just think of the brain upstairs, downstairs. So right now during this pandemic, I would go ahead and gamble and say that 99.9% of us have been living in the downstairs part of our brain, and that it's been really difficult to move to the upstairs part. Why is that? We don't normally live in a state of panic, of crisis, that in like the broader world right now, that living in the state of pandemic is not something that we face every day. So when we are having to give extra brain power to things such as, do I need to strategically plan my meals this week because this milk is going to expire and there's not any at the store right now, or we only have 3 eggs left and I need 2 for this, and so that leaves 1. All of those things that normally we would just say, okay, or for many of us, we would be able to easily say, let me just put that on the grocery list and I'll go get it later or this week, it's no big deal. We're having to exert a lot more brain power to that, to the same way of toilet paper. And I know that's kind of like a joke right now, but I know in my family we're rationing that because it's not in abundance right now, because well, and again, we don't have to go into all of that and just leave it at, it's not at our stores right now. And so things that we wouldn't normally give a second thought about toilet paper, you do, because it's not accessible right now. And so even that, something that may be a little tea, or not even a tea, it's just non-existent, may send you into a state of survival, thinking, I have to go and get this now, I have to find out what to do, what are some alternatives, I have to problem solve this. And we're expending, again, a lot more brain power, and so we're tired. Experiencing these emotions, being in a state of survival instincts, can make you tired, and that's okay. But whenever you are the adult and you are caring for other kids and needing to be a resource for them, that can make everything else you're having to do harder. So if you're an adult and you're watching this video right now and you're caring for multiple children, and this is resonating for you, that's okay. You're heard. You're not alone in that. Yeah, it's a difficult time. But I want to say too, if this is not resonating with you and you're not in this place, be really sensitive to those that are around you, because even though this may not be your perception, this isn't your world, perception is reality. And so for someone next to you, or maybe you're the adult and you feel a lot calmer about things, but your child is having a really hard time with all of the changes, be really sensitive to that, because their perception that things are different, that things are not stable, is their reality, and that's okay. So if you're familiar at all with CBT, I want to spend a little bit of time, and I'll give an overview. If you're not, if you're like, I've never heard of that in my life, that's okay. We'll give an overview. So one of the key components in cognitive behavioral therapy has to do with the triangle, and it's thought, feeling, and action. So the premise is that your thought, something that you initially think that seems almost automatic, controls your feeling, that controls your behavior or actions. So if we, in thinking about how can we feel secure, knowing that we're operating a lot recently in our downstairs part of our brain, we're working on self-regulating so we can get to the upstairs part of our brain, But how do we keep from going there? How do we keep that baby gate unlocked, if you will? Or how do we help our kids unlock their baby gate and help them feel secure when the world doesn't? So if we look at the triangle and think that, and operate under the premise that this is true, if you maybe you are a clinician or you practice under different modalities and you don't agree with CBT, let's just go there with me for a minute. Let's say that if we consider the thought triangle as a way that the world works, okay? So you can take any situation, and if you break it down, you will have something that you think that leads to the way that you feel, that eventually, I won't use a word as strong as control, but influences our actions, our behavior. So if we're operating under that premise, then we can learn to retrain our brains by thinking differently. So if I go to, let's say, we've been talking a lot about grocery stores. Let's say we're going there. So we're going to the grocery store. We have maybe a list. We have some expectations that the store will have these items, and we want them to have those items, and so we're counting on that. We go inside and we see empty shelves. If you aren't used to that, that may send you into your downstairs part of your brain. So you may need to very quickly do some self-regulation, which we'll talk about in just a minute, to get to the upstairs part. But if we can think about the situation differently, we may not ever have to enter panic. We may not ever have to enter shock, or those things that send us into the downstairs part of our brain to begin with. You following me? So I go into the store, I see the empty shelves. My initial thought may be, oh no, I'm not going to be able to get what I need. I can't provide for my family. If we're going to be really extreme and go there, I'm going to starve. People are going to die. So you can see how you can spiral really, really, really quickly whenever we are in the downstairs part of our brain, and just keep going farther and down those stairs, if you will, to go on with that metaphor. Or maybe the key gets a little bit harder to find to unlock that baby gate. So, if that is my initial thought, that is going to send me into a state of panic, into shock, into maybe anger or frustration or sadness or anxiety or depression. Any of these things, we all, even though everyone experiences every emotion at one point or another, you may see already in yourself that, okay, I'm a person that tends to get angry. We hear our kids say it a lot. It's like, well, I just have an anger problem. Well, maybe, but mad's not the same thing as mean, and so we can learn to control that and experience those emotions, but do something differently with them, if you will. So instead of thinking that initial thought that leads me into an emotion that maybe I would rather not experience that much, or that sends me into the downstairs part of my brain, because then that's going to greatly influence, because those emotions are strong, and so that will greatly influence my behavior at that point. I may start panic buying the things that are there that are on my list. I may get in my car and drive erratically to get to another place in hopes that they'll have something else. You may notice like some somatic symptoms. So maybe your breathing, your heart rate start to increase. You may experience shortness of breath. You may bite your nails. You may do all these different things that are also cues to you that you're not living in a state of like normalcy, that you're experiencing something, some emotions that are hard. But let's rewind and reverse. And you go into the store, same situation. You have a list of expectations that you want to find, you want to purchase at the store to care for your family or just yourself or whoever. And you go in and there's empty shelves. So instead of my thought being, oh no, I can't get the things that I need, which leads to, again, the panic, the fear, the anger, the fill in the blank emotion that's going to send us into the downstairs part of our brain, instead of our thought is, I'm going to be able to find the things I need for this time, and I am able to problem solve and to make arrangements for the things that I can't. How does that change your feeling? Again, if I were to guess, many of you may be thinking, okay, I feel calmer. I may not be happy, I may still be a little bit concerned, but I'm not in a state of survival right now. I have my brain in check, and I can go through the store, make more calculated, rational decisions, and be able to problem solve. And so my feelings of calm help my actions to be more rational, if that makes sense. So do you see that this is maybe a situation where it's simple, but it's not always easy, especially since we're starting out right now, where you may already be in a place where it's even difficult to listen to me and hear me right now because you're in a state of panic. So how do we do that? How do we get to the place where we are even regulated enough to the point where we can try and retrain our brains? Well, one thing that you may, or you may be wondering too, like, great, I know how to do that, but how do I help my kiddo? Maybe they're not developmentally at a place where they can work on these things, or feel more secure by changing the way that they think. That's okay, because as parents, or guardian, caring adult in a child's life, you can learn how to regulate and then co-regulate with the child. Okay, so here's some different ways. And here's a good place to mention that you may be experiencing some really difficult behaviors from your kids right now. That's okay. That would be very typical. All right, you may be thinking, yeah, right, Katie, that's not okay. You're not here living in my house. And so I don't want to minimize anyone's experience right now, but that would be very typical. And again, you are not alone if that's something you're experiencing. Kids, even though they challenge it and they maybe would verbally say that they don't like it, kids thrive on structure and boundaries. So when normally maybe your kid goes to a public or a private school and they have a set structure, that's now interrupted. So for our younger kids, well, and in a different way, our older kids too, like you may be seeing more tantrums, more defiant behavior, more arguments, or you may be experiencing more arguments, or your kid just seems more irritable or on edge. Again, all things are typical. We want to make sure that we help them process through those things and learn maybe more productive ways to handle those emotions, right? All feelings are okay, but it's what you do with them that matters. But those things are typical, and there's light at the end of the tunnel, all right? So that's what I want to convey in saying all of that. So if you're helping someone, our child that needs to regulate so they can, maybe, let's just call it what it is, be more manageable, and so you can also regulate yourself. That's okay if that's the place where you are as well. But even for them, if you want to help them get to that place, then we need to know how to regulate, because remember, that's how we unlock that baby gate. So part of the way, and this is different for every person, but we have what we like to call in therapy, and also I think it's a very just common word right now in our just culture and society, of coping skills. You need to know how to cope with these different emotions so you can get back to happy and healthy. Okay, those things that unlock a baby gate to go to your executive functioning, your prefrontal cortex, make decisions that you're proud of, problem solve, think rationally, all of those things. Okay, so something that we do, and I want to say too, this may be a repeat from the last video, but it is so good and it works, is controlling how you breathe. So for a child, knowing that when we get into a state of panic or fear or anxiety, we tend to breathe from our chest, and they're very short breaths. if we instead can learn to belly breathe, you won't be able to see on this video, but breathe from your diaphragm, and we teach our kids like it's like having a balloon in their stomach, and they're going to breathe in and blow up the balloon and then breathe out and let out the air. So, and you can actually put your hand on your diaphragm to know, which is like right, like above your belly button, like below your ribs, your diaphragm. So if you, well, not really below, but anyway, if you put your hand on your diaphragm and you can feel it moving in and out, then we're experiencing correct, like deep breaths. Another way is to, like, if your shoulders are rising up and down, you're probably not breathing from your diaphragm. And you can actually feel your diaphragm moving in and out if you're breathing correctly. And taking those slow breaths, there's also some different patterns that you can do, like 4x4 breathing, where you breathe in for 4 counts, hold for 4, breathe out for 4, be empty for 4. And you can practice these different things and help your kids. I like to do one that's that I call star breathing with them. That you go in, you breathe in when you go up the finger with tracing your hand, and breathe out when you move down. And it just helps our kids at the very least re-regulate their breaths so they can return to a state of calm. And calm, really. That's the word I'm looking for. So in all of these, while you're doing that, maybe you're working with your kid like that's not working, they're too out of control, or maybe I'm too out of control. If you're the adult and you're regulating or helping someone regulate, and so you are their co-regulator, you can, if they're your child, and again, there's no history of trauma, and so it'll be okay to do this, have them sit in your lap, and you may lightly hold them like in a hug position so they can feel you breathing. You may be gently talking to them in their ear, telling them, I know this feeling is hard, it's okay to cry, I'm here for you. Whatever reassuring, true thing that you can do, try and avoid words like calm down, stop crying, do those things, because that may send them back into a state of panic, and that's not the best for de-escalation. So, those are some things. If maybe you're not comfortable, or you're not in a place where you can put the child in your lap, or maybe you're caring for a child that isn't yours in that, or there's a history of trauma, and so that wouldn't be a safe action for them, having them meet your gaze. I use a phrase with my kids whenever they're experiencing some sort of crisis at school, really of any age, that let me see your eyes. Okay, let's breathe together. And so when they can focus in on a point, and they will lose focus, they'll fall back into that crisis again, they'll lose your vision, and just continue to let me see your eyes and just stay calm, cool, and collected. That's going to help them. I will say as well that you may be thinking, my child is not in a state of panic, or they don't feel worried about this pandemic at all because they're not exhibiting any acting out behaviors. They could still be experiencing things internally. You may not be talking or sharing your anxieties or worries or fears or sadness, frustration, fill in the blank with them right now. But kids often pick up on different emotions without even being told. We all do, but even children, they can do that as well. So don't be under the impression that your kid is fine just because they're not throwing things across the room or they're not yelling at you. You may have a kiddo that the way that they deal and process with their emotions is very internal. We don't want to forget about those kiddos, even though they tend to get a lot less attention from us, because they're not the problem kid, right? But they can still be experiencing difficult things that are valid and that we need to take seriously. If you, though, are an adult and you're wanting to know how to regulate or, how to retrain your brain, you want to do some thought work and know how to feel secure, I would really encourage you. There's different things that you can do, but one that I have found that resonates with different clients that I see is keeping a thought journal. And that may sound corny or unrealistic to you, but try it if you haven't. It may not work for you, but for, again, many clients that I have seen, this has worked. So this is what you do. Whenever you experience an emotion that you find yourself maybe falling into often, or maybe you find yourself experiencing in the midst of your panic, maybe, if you will take a moment during that, write down what you're experiencing, what the situation is around experiencing that emotion, then you can return to your thought journal and analyze it. Or maybe you're seeing a therapist. I will say too, if you are experiencing some intense emotions, or especially if you're having thoughts of killing yourself or harming yourself, please reach out to help at this point. If you are already established in therapy, teletherapy is becoming more available during this time than ever before. For like different providers are offering it. I know for us, like, we are doing teletherapy with our students during this time, since we can't see them at school. So, just a segue from that. But maybe if you are able to do this, to kind of analyze that situation, and over time, the more that you do this, you may be able to find common things. If you're not able to, or maybe you aren't seeing like commonalities or something, you may work with the therapist to see how can I learn my thought processes better, so I can start to change that, which is going to change my feeling, which changes my behavior. So we have core beliefs and about ourselves, and for many people those can be irrational or based in fear. So if we can start to analyze that and see what are some of these commonalities and start to actively challenge those things, we can start to really change the way that we think. And so like anything, we can get into habits and patterns of thinking. So if you tend to go into a state of crisis and you start spiraling, it won't be super easy, but it is possible for you to not engage in that spiral, slowly but surely, and maybe even get to a sense of where we're just one step behind the baby gate, and it's very easy to use our coping skills and to unlock it and move past. So that's just one way. Like I said, there's a ton of other ways that you can retrain your brain, if you will, really analyze the way that you're thinking, and so you can start feeling more secure because we're changing the way that we think. I realize I only gave you one coping skill, but your coping skills really, they need to be varied and abundant, I will say. So there's lots of different lists and things online for kids and adults. I will say healthy coping skills are always primary, right? So things that you might be able to do with items you already have around the house. Color, journal, listen to music that helps you feel better. If you can safely, go on a walk, do exercise. Exercise is one of the best coping skills that you can utilize. It is great in combating a number of mental health disorders as well. And so in helping be in a more rational state of mind, it releases endorphins, and even though I don't love it, I make myself do it so I can feel better. So exercising is one, and there's, I want to say, I forget exactly the company, but there's all kinds of different companies right now. I'm sure you may have seen different things for internet companies that are offering free internet for different or kids that are in school so they can complete their online activities. There's programs more than ever before that are offering virtual services, and even like some newsletters and things. And so if reading helps you and gaining more information helps you, there are some things for parents, guardians, and I'm sure for kids as well, from reputable sources. So parents, guardians out there, make sure you are looking at what your kids are looking at, because there's also some really terrible things on the internet for people that may not be thinking in the most rational state of mind. So all that to say, there are resources out there. So use your coping skills, retrain your brain. There are ways that you can feel secure even when the world doesn't seem that way right now. At the very least, check out our Facebook page, our website, cistarrant.org. We will be posting different resources for you, including some links to various agencies that may be really beneficial during this time. Our first one, that we're calling it #FindItFriday, is featuring Guild Children's Services. And so if you are in a state where you're needing some financial assistance right now, they may be a resource for you. And so be sure to check that out on Friday. We hope to be doing the same thing, especially throughout this time that we're out of school and through this pandemic, to make sure that we are still being communities in schools and making sure that we're linking resources in the community to you guys. We are also going to be doing some different social emotional learning activities. So if you're looking for some more structure in your day, and that is a way that you can implement some more coping skills and just some activities that are directly targeted at improving yours and your students' well-being, and just promoting a positive mindset and positive thinking and acting, those are coming your way as well. So continue to check back here. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. I can check back, because this is pre-recorded instead of live. I can check back and answer comments if you want to leave a comment on this video, or maybe something didn't make sense to you and you want clarity on that. That's great. Please ask away. No shame or judgment. This is a time for us to be in together. And two, if you learn nothing else from this video, it is that I want you to take away, at the very least, you're not alone. It's okay to be experiencing what you are right now, and there are resources out there to help you get through it. So, one of the last things that I want to leave you with as well is to remember that when you're talking to your kids, if they're experiencing some uncertainty around this pandemic right now, make sure that you're listening and not just giving advice, but being really genuine and listening to them. You may not agree with what they're saying or what they're feeling, but that's their perception, which means it's their reality. So it will be much more helpful for you to validate that emotion, let them know that it's okay and normal to be experiencing different emotions, not just now, but throughout their entire life. You are going to be empowering them to take responsibility and seek out solutions for dealing with those emotions, instead of dismissing them to where they bottle up and then they become bigger problems later. So again, I will be kind of monitoring the posts. If you want to ask questions, you can also reach out to us through our website if you want a more private way to ask a question or something like that. Even though we're not an emergency resource, please use emergency services for any type of crisis or things like that. But I hope that you found this video useful, and we hope to be coming to you guys with more in the future. So stay well, unlock that baby gate when you can, and yeah, I'll see you next time.